Yuna crawled through the narrow metal tubes inside the human space station. Her black suit made her almost invisible in the darkness. She had been crawling for 2 hours now, and her knees hurt badly. But she couldn't stop. Her mission was too important. The HFY military had sent their best warrior for this job. Yuna had killed 17 humans in her career. Tonight would be number 18. Dr. Kim Taemin had to die. His research was getting too close to secrets that could destroy her entire race. She pulled out a small device and checked the station map. Taemin's lab was just 50 meters ahead. Through the metal grating, she could see the bright lights of the research floor. Scientists in white coats walked around, completely unaware that death was crawling above their heads. Yuna's heart was beating fast, but not from fear. She felt excited. Humans were weak creatures. They had no real warriors, no honor. They fought their wars with machines and tricks. When she dropped into that lab, Taemin would probably cry and beg for his life like all the others. She reached the spot directly above his laboratory. Through the grating, she could see him working alone at a large computer screen. Perfect, no witnesses, no complications. Just a quick kill, and then back to the extraction point. Yuna pulled out her plasma, cut her, and began burning through the metal grating. The tool made almost no sound, and the smell of melted metal was barely noticeable. She had done this exact same thing dozens of times before, but as she lifted the grating away, something went wrong. Her cloaking device, the thing that made her invisible, started making a strange buzzing sound. She looked down at the small box on her belt and saw red warning lights flashing. "No, no, no," she whispered in her own language. This couldn't be happening. Not now. The buzzing got louder. Then sparks started flying from the device. The smell of burning electronics filled the air. Yuna tried to fix it, but she knew it was too late. The cloaking field around her body flickered and died. Down in the lab, Dr. Taemin looked up from his computer. His eyes went wide when he saw the hole in the ceiling. Then he saw Yuna hanging there, no longer invisible. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Yuna had expected to see fear in his eyes. Instead, she saw something else. Curiosity, like he was looking at an interesting puzzle instead of a deadly enemy. Then the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors as security guards ran toward the lab. Yuna dropped through the hole, landing perfectly on her feet. She pulled out her weapon, but before she could use it, 6 human guards burst through the door. They wore thick armor and carried weapons that hummed with electric energy. "Don't move," one of them shouted. "Drop your weapon." Yuna looked around the room. 6 guards, 1 exit, and Dr. Taemin standing behind his desk, looking more fascinated than frightened. She was trapped. She had 2 choices: fight and probably die, or surrender and definitely die. Humans didn't take prisoners. Everyone knew that. They tortured aliens for information, then killed them slowly. The weapons were all pointed at her now. Bright red laser dots danced across her chest. One wrong move, and she would be burned to ash. Yuna dropped her weapon and raised her hands. The guards moved in quickly, snapping heavy metal restraints around her wrists. The metal felt cold against her skin. As they dragged her toward the door, she caught Dr. Taemin's eyes one more time. He wasn't smiling like she expected. Instead, he looked almost sorry. That was impossible, she told herself. Humans felt no mercy for her kind. Soon, the real torture would begin. The guards threw Yuna into a small white room with no windows. The walls were completely smooth, and a single bright light hung from the ceiling. She had seen rooms like this before in HFY intelligence reports. This was where humans broke their prisoners. She sat on the cold metal bench and waited. Her wrists still hurt from the restraints, but that pain would seem like nothing compared to what was coming. She had been trained to resist torture, but everyone had limits. The question was how long she could hold out before telling them everything. Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. Time felt strange in the white room. Yuna tried to stay calm by thinking about her home planet. She remembered the purple forests where she used to hunt as a child, the warm sand between her toes, her mother's voice calling her name. Finally, she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy boots, Probably 2 or 3 people. The interrogation team was coming. The door made a soft hissing sound as it opened. Yuna tensed her muscles and prepared for the worst. But when she looked up, she saw something completely unexpected. Dr. Kim Tae-min walked into the room alone. He wasn't wearing military clothes or carrying any weapons, just the same white lab coat from before. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. "Where are the others?" Yuna asked in perfect human language. She had studied their speech for years. Tae-min looked confused. "What others?" "The interrogation team. The torture specialists." She tried to keep her voice steady, but it was hard. He sat down on the bench across from her, moving slowly like he didn't want to scare her. "There's no torture team. I asked to speak with you alone." Yuna laughed, but it sounded bitter even to her own ears. Humans always lie before they start cutting. "I'm not going to hurt you," Tae-min said quietly. He pulled out a small tablet computer and set it on the bench between them. "I just want to ask you some questions. I won't tell you anything about Kethari military secrets. I don't care about military secrets." He touched the tablet screen and pictures appeared, strange diagrams that looked like biological charts. "I want to know about your body, your biology." This was a new kind of torture, psychological games. Make the prisoner comfortable, then strike when they weren't expecting it. Yuna had read about these techniques. "Why?" she asked. Tae-min was quiet for a long moment. He stared at the pictures on his tablet, then looked up at her with sad eyes. "Because I think something terrible has been done to both of us, to your people and mine." "You're lying. 3 months ago, I found something in our DNA, something that shouldn't be there." He turned the tablet toward her so she could see the screen better. "These are genetic markers. They're in every human I've tested." Yuna looked at the diagrams but didn't understand what they meant. So? "So they're not natural. Someone put them there. Someone changed us." His voice got excited now, like a scientist who had just made an important discovery. "And I think they changed your people too." "That's impossible, is it?" Tae-min leaned forward. "Tell me something. When your people get sick around human technology, how long does it take?" Yuna didn't want to answer, but the question was so strange she found herself responding. "About 6 hours for the first symptoms, 12 hours for serious illness. And it gets worse with each generation, doesn't it? Your grandparents could tolerate human presence longer than your parents. Your parents longer than you." She stared at him. How could he know that? It was classified information that only high-ranking military officers understood. "How do you know about the generational weakness?" she demanded. "Because humans have the same problem with your technology. We get sicker faster than our ancestors did." Tae-min's eyes were bright with excitement now. "Don't you see? This isn't natural evolution. Someone is doing this to us on purpose." Yuna felt something cold growing in her stomach. Not fear exactly, but something worse. Doubt. "You're trying to confuse me," she said. "I'm trying to save us." "Both?" Yuna felt it starting during their second hour of talking. First, it was just a strange tingling in her fingertips. She tried to ignore it, but the feeling spread up her arms like cold water flowing through her veins. "Are you all right?" Tae-min asked, looking up from his tablet. "I'm fine," she lied, but she wasn't fine. Her skin was starting to feel tight, like it didn't fit her body properly anymore. This was how it always began. The human technology poisoning. She had maybe 4 hours before it got really bad, 6 hours before she started losing consciousness. After that, she would die slowly and painfully. Every Kethari warrior knew these numbers by heart. "You don't look fine," Tae-min said. He was studying her face carefully. "Your skin color is changing." Yuna looked down at her. Hands. The normal blue-gray color was turning pale, almost white. Her heart started beating faster, which only made the poison spread quicker through her blood. "It's nothing," she said, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. "This is the human technology sickness, isn't it?" Tae-min stood up suddenly. "The one I was just telling you about." Yuna didn't answer. She was trying to control her breathing, trying to slow down her heart rate. But panic was setting in. She was going to die in this white room, far from home, and no one would ever know what happened to her. "How long do we have?" Tae-min asked. "Why? Do you care?" The words came out harsher than she meant them to. Because I meant what I said, I'm not going to let you die. He was already moving toward the door. Computer, unlock detention room 7. Emergency medical override. A calm voice answered from speakers in the ceiling. Dr. Kim, you do not have authorization to release the prisoner. Then get me authorization. This alien is dying. Human Kethari biological incompatibility is a known factor. The prisoner was informed of the risks when she chose to board this station. Yuna almost laughed. Even the computers thought she deserved to die. But Taemin wasn't giving up. Computer, I'm invoking Research Protocol 9. I need to study this biological reaction in real time. That protocol requires the prisoner to be conscious and cooperative. She is cooperative, and she'll be dead in 4 hours if I don't do something. Right now. There was a pause. Then the heavy metal restraints around Yuna's wrists clicked open. You have 2 hours, Dr. Kim. Security will be monitoring. Yuna stared at her free hands in disbelief. No human had ever removed a Kethari prisoner's restraints. It went against everything she had been taught about their cruelty. Can you walk? Taemin asked. She tried to stand, but her legs felt like water. The poison was moving faster now. Taemin caught her arm as she stumbled. I've got you, he said. My lab has better equipment. I can figure this out. Why are you helping me? She whispered. Because if I'm right about what's been done to us, then you and I are not enemies. We're both victims. They moved slowly through the station corridors. Other humans stared as they passed, but no one tried to stop them. Yuna's vision was starting to blur, and she could taste metal in her mouth. These were the advanced symptoms. How much time? Taemin asked as they entered his laboratory. 2 hours, maybe 3. That's enough. He helped her sit on an examination table, then started pulling out medical equipment she had never seen before. I've been studying this biological incompatibility for months. I have some theories. Theories won't save me. Maybe not, but I'm going to try anyway. He attached strange sensors to her arms and forehead. Because if you die, the truth dies. With you, and I think the truth is more important than our war. Yuna felt consciousness starting to slip away, but she forced herself to stay awake. For the first time since her capture, she wanted to see what would happen next. The medicine tasted horrible, but it worked. Within 30 minutes, the white color started leaving Yuna's skin. Her breathing became easier, and the metal taste in her mouth went away. She watched Taemin work at his computer, analyzing her blood samples with machines that hummed and beeped softly. This is impossible, he muttered, staring at the screen. Your cellular structure should be completely different from ours. It is different, Yuna said. She was sitting up now, feeling much stronger. That's why we can't be near each other for long periods. But that's just it. Look at this. Taemin turned his monitor so she could see it. The screen showed 2 different patterns, like fingerprints made of tiny dots. The left pattern is from your blood. The right one is from mine. Yuna looked closer. The patterns were different, but not as different as she expected. They look almost similar. Exactly. They're too similar. If we really evolved on separate planets millions of light years apart, our biology should have nothing in common. But we do. He pulled up another screen. We both need the same type of atmosphere. We both drink water. We both process energy the same way. So what does that mean? Taemin was quiet for a moment, like he was afraid to say what he was thinking. I think we came from the same place originally. I think both our species used to live together. Yuna felt something cold in her stomach again. That's not possible. Our histories go back thousands of years. There's no record of humans and Kethari ever living peacefully. What if someone erased those records? Taemin pulled up a new file on his computer. Look at these genetic markers I found in both our DNA. The screen showed long strings of letters and numbers that meant nothing to Yuna. But Taemin was pointing excitedly at certain sections. These sequences don't belong in natural evolution. They're too perfect, too organized. Someone put them there on purpose. Put them there for what? To make us sick around each other, to make sure we could never live together again. His voice was getting angry now. Someone took two species that used to be friends and turned them into enemies. Una thought about her grandmother's stories. The old woman used to tell tales about a time when Kethari could walk under alien suns without getting sick, when they traded with strange beings who looked almost like them but had different colored skin. My grandmother used to tell stories, she said slowly, about the time before the Great Sickness. I always thought they were just fairy tales. What kind of stories? She said there was a time when our people traveled between the stars freely, when we had friends on other worlds who looked like us but were different colors. Una paused. She said they had skin like yours. Tamin's eyes went wide. What happened to end that time? A plague. It made Kethari sick whenever they went. Near the star friends. My grandmother said it came from nowhere, like someone had cursed both races. Una felt her heart beating faster. But she also said something else. She said the plague wasn't natural. She said it came from the Dark Ones. The Dark Ones? Beings who lived in the empty spaces between stars. They were jealous of the friendship between Kethari and the Star Friends, so they poisoned both races to keep them apart. Tamin was typing frantically on his computer now. When did this plague start, according to your grandmother's stories? About 300 years ago. 300 years ago, humans suddenly developed genetic incompatibility with alien biology. Before that, according to our oldest records, we could interact with other species without problems. He turned to look at her. Your grandmother wasn't telling fairy tales. She was telling history. Una felt the world shifting around her. Everything she had been taught, everything she believed about humans being natural enemies was falling apart. If this is true, she said quietly, then our entire war is based on a lie. Not just a lie, a weapon. Someone used biology as a weapon, to turn friends into enemies. Tamin's face was grim. And I think they're still out there watching us fight. Tamin's fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as he searched through files that most people weren't allowed to see. Military records, government documents, and scientific reports from both human and captured Kethari databases. Una watched the screen, trying to understand what he was looking for. There, he said suddenly. Look at this. A star map appeared, on the screen, showing the locations of every major battle between humans and Kethari over the past 50 years. Red dots marked where the fighting had been heaviest. I don't see anything unusual, Una said. That's because you're looking at it wrong. Watch what happens when I add this layer. Tamin pressed another button, and blue dots appeared on the map. These blue dots show every location where ships have disappeared, not destroyed in battle, just Vania. Shared completely. Una leaned forward. The blue dots formed a perfect circle around all the red battle zones. Ships from both sides. Human and Kethari vessels. They disappear, and we blame each other for destroying them. But look at the pattern. Someone is taking ships from the edges of our conflicts. Why would someone do that? To study us, to learn our weaknesses. Tamin pulled up another file. But that's not the strangest part. Look at this communication log. The screen showed messages between human military commanders from the past year. But some of the messages looked wrong. The words were right, but something about them felt strange. These orders came from Admiral Peterson, Tamin said. But I knew Peterson personally. He would never write messages like this. The vocabulary is wrong. The sentence structure is too formal. You think someone else sent those messages? I think someone has been pretending to be our military leaders, and probably yours too. He switched to a different file. This is a captured Kethari transmission from last month. It ordered your people to attack the civilian colony on Rigel 7. Una studied the message. It was written in her language, but it felt wrong somehow. This doesn't sound like any Kethari commander I know. We don't attack civilians. It goes against our honor code. But the attack happened anyway, didn't it? Yes. 37 human civilians died. It was one of our darkest moments. Una felt sick thinking about it. Our commanders said it was necessary, but many warriors refused to participate, because deep down you knew it was wrong. Someone wanted humans to think Kethari were monsters, just like someone wanted Kethari to think humans were heartless killers. Tamin opened more files. showing a pattern that made Yuna's blood run cold. Every major escalation in the war had started with mysterious orders that no one could trace back to their real source. Every war crime that made both sides hate each other more had been based on intelligence that later turned out to be false. "Someone has been controlling our war from the beginning," she whispered. "Not just controlling it, feeding it, making it worse." Taemin's voice was grim. Every time it looked like peace might be possible, something terrible would happen to restart the fighting. But who? Who would have the power to manipulate both our governments? Taemin hesitated before answering. "I found references to them in the oldest military files, both human and Kethari. They're called the Dominion." "I've never heard that." "Name?" "Most people haven't. They work from the shadows, but according to these files, they're not human or Kethari. They're something else entirely." He pulled up a file that was mostly blacked out, with only a few sentences visible. "What little we know suggests they're an ancient species that feeds on conflict. They find two civilizations and turn them against each other, then harvest resources while both sides are too busy fighting to notice." Yuna felt her world crumbling around her. "How long have they been doing this to us?" "Based on the genetic evidence, at least 300 years, maybe longer." Taemin's face was pale. "They created the biological incompatibility to ensure we could never make peace. Then they've been pulling strings on both sides to keep us fighting. All those warriors who died, all those battles." Yuna's voice broke. "None of it was real. We've been dancing to someone else's tune this entire time. And they're still out there, still controlling us. This whole war is just entertainment for them." Suddenly, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and an automated voice began speaking. "Incoming vessels detected. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill." Taemin and Yuna looked at each other with growing horror. The timing was too perfect. Just as they had discovered the truth, someone was coming to silence them forever. "They know," Yuna said, quietly. "The Dominion knows we've figured it out." Through the laboratory window they could see ships approaching the station. Ships that looked like neither human nor Kethari designs. Ships that seemed to swallow light itself. The real enemy had finally decided to show themselves. The station shook violently as the first Dominion weapons hit the outer hull. Yuna grabbed onto the laboratory table to keep from falling, while Taemin frantically saved his research data to a portable drive. "How long do we have?" she asked, watching sparks fly from damaged equipment around the room. "Not long. Their ships are unlike anything I've seen before." Taemin unplugged the drive and shoved it into his pocket. "The station's shields won't hold for more than 10 minutes. Another blast rocked the station and the lights flickered. Through the window, Yuna could see the Dominion vessels moving closer. They looked like giant black spiders made of metal, with legs that seemed to reach out and drain energy from everything they touched. "We need to get to the escape pods," Taemin said. "Wait." Yuna grabbed his arm. "Your research, all the proof. We found about the biological weapons, the fake military orders, everything. If we die, no one will ever know the truth. I've got it all right here." He patted his pocket where the data drive was hidden. "One drive isn't enough. They'll destroy it." Yuna looked around the laboratory, thinking quickly. "We need to send copies everywhere. To Human Command, to Kethari leadership, to every military base and civilian station we can reach." The station's communications array was hit in the first attack. "I can't send anything. Then we need to get closer to a working transmitter." Yuna moved to the window and studied the station's layout. "There's an emergency communication center 3 levels down. It has its own power source." The station shook again, harder this time. Pieces of the ceiling started falling around them. "That's in the opposite direction from the escape pods," Taemin pointed out. "I know. If we go there first, we might not make it out alive." Yuna looked at him seriously. "If we don't go there, millions of people will keep dying in a war that should never have happened. The Dominion will win, and both our species will destroy each other." Taemin was quiet for a moment, weighing their chances. Finally, he nodded. "You're right. The truth is more important than our lives." They ran through corridors filled with smoke and emergency lighting. Other station personnel were rushing toward the escape pods, but Taemin and Yuna pushed against the crowd, heading deeper into the station. "Dr. Kim," someone called out. "The evacuation order has been given. All personnel to the pods immediately. Go ahead, Taman shouted back. I have to secure some critical research data. They reached the emergency stairwell just as another explosion shook the station. The main elevators were offline, so they had to climb down 3 flights of stairs while debris fell around them. There, Taman pointed to a heavy door marked with communication symbols. That's the emergency center. But when they reached the door, it was locked with a security code panel. Red letters flashed. Authorized personnel only. I don't have clearance for this level, Taman said. Yuna studied the lock for a moment, then pulled out a small tool from her belt. Kethari infiltration training covers many useful skills. She worked on the panel for 30 seconds while the station continued shaking around them. Finally, the lock clicked open. Inside, the emergency communication center was still functioning. Banks of computers and transmitters lined the walls, all protected by backup power systems. How long do you need? Yuna asked, watching the door. 5 minutes to upload everything to the main networks. Maybe 3 if I skip the error checking. Skip the error checking. We don't have 5 minutes. Taman's fingers flew across the keyboard, uploading files to human military networks, civilian news stations, and even some Kethari frequencies that the station's computers had on file. 60% complete, he said. The lights went out. Emergency P. Owa kicked in a second later, but everything was running slower now. 80%. Through the walls, they could hear the sound of metal tearing. The Dominion ships were cutting through the station's hull like it was made of paper. 95%. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. But these weren't human footsteps. They made a clicking sound like claws on metal. Upload complete, Taman whispered. The truth is out there now. Yuna drew her weapon and moved toward the door. Good. Now let's see if we can survive long enough to watch the universe change. The clicking footsteps stopped right outside the communication center door. Yuna held her weapon ready, while Taman quietly shut down the computers to hide what they had been doing. Both of them barely breathed as they waited. Then the footsteps moved away, heading toward the escape pod bays. Yuna slowly opened the door and peered into the corridor. It was empty, but she could see strange scratch marks on the metal walls, where the Dominion soldiers had passed. This way, she whispered, leading Taman toward the emergency stairs. They climbed up 2 levels before hearing voices ahead of them. But these weren't the clicking sounds of Dominion troops. These were familiar voices speaking in Kethari language. The extraction team, Yuna breathed. They came for me. Around the corner, she could see 5 Kethari warriors in full combat armor. They were setting up some kind of scanning equipment, probably trying to locate her position. The team leader was someone she recognized immediately. Captain Minho had trained her when she was just a young recruit. He had taught her how to fight, how to think like a warrior, how to survive behind enemy lines. He was like a father to her. There are 6 humans trapped in the maintenance section, one of the warriors was saying. Should we eliminate them? No time, Minho replied. Our mission is to find Yuna and get out before this station explodes. The humans can die with their ship. Yuna felt her heart breaking. These warriors had risked everything to save her, but they didn't know the truth. They still thought humans were the enemy. I have to talk to them, she whispered to Taman. They'll kill me the moment they see me. Not if I explain everything first. But even as she said it, Yuna wasn't sure. Minho was a good warrior, but he was also completely loyal to Kethari Command. Would he listen to a story about ancient conspiracies and biological weapons? Captain Minho, she called out, stepping into the corridor with her hands raised. The warriors spun around, weapons ready. When they saw her, relief flooded their faces. Yuna, Minho rushed forward. Thank the ancestors you're alive. We were told the humans were torturing you. They weren't torturing me, Captain. They were helping me. Minho's face darkened. What did they do to your mind, child? Nothing. I discovered something important, something that changes everything about this war. We don't have time for stories. The station is falling apart, and there are hostile ships outside. Minho gestured toward the emergency stairs. We need to reach our ship immediately. Wait, Yuna said. There's someone I need you to meet. She turned toward the communication center and nodded. Taman stepped out carefully, keeping his hands visible and empty. The reaction was instant. 5 weapons were pointed at him, and she could hear the high-pitched whine of charging energy cells. "Step away from the human, Yuna," Minho ordered. "He's controlling you somehow." "He's not controlling me. He saved my life. Humans don't save Kethari lives, they end them." "This one is different." Yuna moved protectively in front of Taemin. "Captain, you taught me to think for myself, to question orders that don't make sense. I'm asking you to listen to me now." Minho's finger was on his weapon's trigger. "I'm listening. You have 30 seconds. Our war with the humans is fake. Someone else has been controlling both sides, making us fight each other while they steal resources and study our weaknesses." The words came out in a rush. "This human proved it to me. He showed me genetic evidence that we used to live together. Peacefully. Impossible. Remember the stories your grandmother told you? About the time before the Great Sickness? When Kethari could travel between stars without getting sick?" Minho's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Those are just old tales. They're history, and this human has the proof." Yuna could see doubt creeping into the faces of the other warriors. "The Dominion ships outside aren't here to rescue me. They're here to kill all of us and destroy the evidence." "Even if that's true," Minho said slowly, "this human is still our enemy." "No, Captain, he's our ally, and right now, he's the only chance we have to end this war before it destroys both our species." Minho stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Taemin, who had remained perfectly still during the entire conversation. "You're asking me to choose between everything I've believed my entire life and the word of one human. I'm asking you to choose between the past and the future," Yuna replied, "between revenge and truth." The station shook again, reminding them all that time was running out. Captain Minho's weapons stayed pointed at Taemin for what felt like forever. The other 4 warriors watched their leader, waiting for orders. Yuna could see the conflict in Minho's eyes as he struggled between duty and doubt. 30 seconds are up," one of the younger warriors said. "Captain, we should eliminate the human and extract Yuna immediately." "Wait," Minho said quietly. He lowered his weapon slightly. "Yuna, show me this proof." Taemin slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the data drive. "Everything is on here. Genetic evidence, fake military, orders, communication logs, showing how both sides have been manipulated. It could be fabricated," another warrior argued. "Then explain this," Yuna said. She rolled up her sleeve, showing where Taemin's medicine had healed the biological poisoning. "I was dying from human technology exposure. He cured me. How could he do that if he was trying to harm me?" Minho studied her arm. The skin was completely normal, showing no signs of the deadly reaction that should have killed her hours ago. "The medicine he gave me proves that the biological incompatibility isn't natural," Yuna continued. "Someone designed it to keep our species apart." Before Minho could respond, new alarms started blaring. These were different from the station's emergency signals. These alarms were coming from the Kethari ship. "Captain," a voice crackled through Minho's communicator, "we're detecting massive energy readings from the unknown vessels. They're charging weapons that could destroy the entire station." "How long do we have?" Minho asked. 2 minutes, maybe less." The captain looked around at his team, then at Yuna and Taemin. "We need to leave now." "Not without broadcasting this information first," Yuna said firmly. "The Dominion will destroy all evidence if we don't get it to both our governments immediately." "The station's communication systems are damaged. Our ship has transmitters," Taemin said. "If you let me access them, I can send copies of everything to human and Kethari command simultaneously." One of the warriors laughed bitterly. "Let a human onto our ship? Captain, this is madness." "Maybe it is," Minho said slowly. "But if Yuna is right, then everything we've done for the past 300 years has been madness." The station shook violently again. Through the walls, they could hear the sound of metal being torn apart as the Dominion ships began their final attack. "Decision time, Captain," Yuna said. "Trust me or watch both our species destroy each other while the real enemy laughs." Minho was quiet for 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Then he made his choice. "Move out. All of us." "The human comes with us." The youngest warrior stepped forward. "Captain, I can't follow an order that puts our mission at risk." "Then you're relieved of duty," Minho said calmly. Anyone else want to question my judgment? The other 3 warriors looked uncertain, but they followed their captain's lead. The relieved warrior watched them go, his face full of anger and confusion. They ran through corridors that were now glowing red from fires and emergency lighting. Pieces of the ceiling crashed down around them as the Dominion weapons tore the E station apart. Behind them they could hear the clicking footsteps of enemy soldiers getting closer. There, Minho pointed to an airlock where a sleek Kethari ship was docked. 30 more seconds, but as they reached the airlock, the young warrior who had been relieved of duty appeared ahead of them, weapon drawn and pointed directly at Taemin. "I won't let you take a human spy onto our ship," he said. "Captain, step aside." "Stand down, Jinwoo," Minho ordered. "I'm sorry, Captain, but some things are more important than following orders." Yuna moved protectively in front of Taemin again. "Jinwoo, please. You've known me since we were children. Have I ever lied to you? There's always a first time." The station's lights flickered and went out completely. In the darkness, Yuna heard the sound of weapons charging. When the emergency lights came back on a second later, she saw something that broke her heart. Jinwoo was on the ground, unconscious, but breathing. Captain Minho stood over him holding a stun weapon. "Sometimes," Minho said sadly, "protecting someone means protecting them from their own mistakes." They dragged Jinwoo's unconscious body through the airlock and onto the ship. As the doors sealed behind them, the station exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space like a new star. But inside the Kethari ship, Taemin was already working at the communication console, uploading the truth to every military frequency. In known space, the war was about to change forever. 6 months after the station's destruction, Yuna stood in the Great Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime, a neutral space station that had been built specifically for this moment. Representatives from both human and Kethari governments sat at a massive circular table, with Taemin's research data displayed on screens all around the room. The evidence had spread like wildfire through both civilizations. Military commanders on both sides had compared notes and realized that their most brutal orders had come from sources that couldn't be traced. Scientists had confirmed the genetic manipulation that had made their species incompatible. Historians had dug up old records that told stories of cooperation instead of conflict, but changing 300 years of hatred wasn't easy. The Kethari Military Council still doesn't trust this information, Admiral Soyon was saying from the human side of the table. "How do we know this isn't an elaborate trick?" General Hyunwoo, representing the Kethari forces, leaned forward. "Our people ask the same question about human intentions. Some of my commanders believe this is all designed to make us lower our guard." Yuna exchanged glances with Taemin, who was sitting nearby as a scientific advisor. They had expected this resistance. Fear was easier than hope, especially after so many years of war. "Perhaps we should focus on what we've accomplished together." "Already," Taemin suggested. "The joint medical research that cured the biological incompatibility. The shared intelligence that helped us track down 3 Dominion spy networks." He was right. In the past 6 months, human and Kethari scientists had worked together to develop treatments that allowed both species to coexist without getting sick. Military intelligence officers had compared their files and found dozens of Dominion agents who had been manipulating both governments for decades. Most importantly, they had fought side by side when the Dominion had launched desperate attacks to stop the peace process. Those battles had proven that humans and Kethari made excellent allies when they weren't being turned against each other. "The proof is in our actions," Captain Minho said from where he sat as Yuna's military advisor. 6 months ago, I would have killed any human I saw. Today I would die to protect Dr. Taemin because he represents the future both our species need." A young human diplomat raised her hand. "What about the families who lost loved ones in this war? How do we tell them that their children died for nothing?" The room fell silent. This was the hardest part of making peace. Both sides had lost millions of people over the centuries. How do you honor those deaths while admitting the entire war had been based on lies? Yuna stood up slowly. "I think about my parents every day. They died in the Battle of Kepler Station 5 years ago, killed by human weapons. For 5 years I hated every human in the galaxy." She looked around the room, making eye contact with both human and Kethari representatives. "But now I know the truth. My parents didn't die fighting humans. They died fighting the Dominion's lies. The humans who killed them were just as manipulated as we were. Their families probably mourn them too. She walked to the center of the room, where a memorial wall displayed the names of people from both species who had died in the war. We can't bring back the dead, but we can make sure they didn't die for nothing. We can build the future they would have wanted for their children, a future where humans and Kethari explore the stars together instead of trying to destroy each other. Taman joined her at the memorial wall. The Dominion wanted us to stay enemies forever. Every day we remain at peace is a victory against them. Every human and Kethari child who grows up without fear is proof that their plan failed. Admiral Soyon was the first to stand. Then General Hyunwoo. One by one, every representative in the room rose to their feet. The Treaty of Nexus Prime is hereby signed, Admiral Soyon announced. May this be the beginning of a new age of cooperation between our peoples. As the formal ceremony concluded, Yuna found herself standing next to Taemin on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships from both fleets were working together now, patrolling for Dominion threats and exploring new worlds. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. Taemin smiled. "It's working already. Look at us. 6 months ago we were sworn enemies. Now we're friends planning to explore the galaxy together." Yuna nodded, thinking about how much had changed since that night. When her cloaking device failed, one moment of vulnerability had led to the most important discovery in galactic history. "The Dominion made one mistake," she said. "What's that?" "They underestimated what happens when enemies become friends. We're stronger together than we ever were apart." In the distance, a joint human-Kethari exploration ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, carrying crews from both species toward unknown worlds. The future was no longer about war. It was about wonder.